As a current educator in China, I have decided that I wanted to focus on China's compulsory education laws, which are very important, a very big staple here in the country.
The compulsory education law in China is actually called the 9-year compulsory education standard, which was established on July 1st, 1986. The goal of this law was to guarantee school-age children that they would have 9 years of compulsory education provided by the government. And 6 of those years would be in primary school, and 3 of those years would be in secondary. The program was actually geared to focus more on rural areas, particularly those in small villages and towns in China where income levels are quite low. And what they wanted to do was they wanted to connect what was already happening in urban areas to provide education throughout the whole of the country. There are 3 main features of the 9-year education law system. One is continuity, the other is principle of proximity, and the last is unity. Continuity means that students finish their education from the elementary and secondary level. That is a compulsory requirement by the government. The principle of proximity, which allows students to go to middle schools that are in the proximity of where they live instead of taking entrance exams to be enrolled into middle school. Unity is schools carry out the 9-year education system and standards that are based on the teaching and education of the child, regardless of where they are. In day-to-day teaching in China, one of the standards for primary and junior secondary education is Chinese, mathematics, physical education, music, arts, and now English. Also, we have a component called moral education, which is a subject that is aimed at focusing on love for the country, the government, and also the Chinese people. Students are enrolled into the Young Pioneers program as youth organizations, which are geared towards showing country pride, unity, and togetherness. The strengths of the compulsory education law are that according to the government statistics, according to the China's Ministry of Education, there's a 99% attendance rate in primary school. Under this law, all 9 years of education are tuition free, regardless of your income level. Students are required by law and are given the opportunity to attend school and get that 9 years of education. Students are also granted education for 9 years without prejudice. This is one of the laws that the government has said they really focus on, is not being prejudiced when it comes to education. Now, of course, that law is not perfect. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look into some of the weaknesses of the law and actually look at a case study in China in a very low-income area where this very law is not holding fruit.
For these children in rural Babei village, an education is the first step towards getting out of poverty. They're among the poorest people in China. But despite a law making education compulsory for all, only a few of the students here are girls. Like all the other women of her family, 14-year-old Yang Shuchuan has never been to school. Instead, she works the fields with this water buffalo for 15 hours a day.
I wish I could go to school and then make some money so I could send my little brother and sister to go to school too.
But Yang's grandmother says that's not really an option for her, and life is just too difficult for women here. Traditionally, boys have always been preferred, so they get the education, and when the time comes, the boys can migrate to the cities to find better paying jobs, leaving the women behind to tend to the families and to the farms. According to the government, 99.79% of all children who are meant to be in school are. But that figure doesn't seem to reflect the reality, particularly in rural China, where mixed classrooms like this one are a rarity. There, boys and girls are still locked in traditional roles. The law making it compulsory for girls to get an education was supposed to address deep-seated prejudice against them and break stereotypes.
The biggest consequence of the girls not going to school is that the thought and the practice will pass on to the next generations. The lack of education and poverty will continue to exist in the family. However, if a girl goes through proper education, there will be a positive influence in the whole family.
Yang Shuchuan's dream is part of a greater aspiration for China as a whole. But there's no breaking the cycle for many here, as widespread poverty continues to make it difficult to leave traditional roles behind. Marga Ortigas, Al Jazeera, Beijing.
In the video, I think you can all see that there is definitely some weaknesses with the law, especially with low-income minority populations in China. There's still a gender issue as well that, kind of threatens the law's effectiveness in terms of affecting the entire country, particularly with women. And in general, it can really lead to an imbalance in terms of education through genders, which can pose as an issue or a problem in years to come as the country continues to develop.